would like to call the planning board meeting for the month of May to order. All rise for the flag salute, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pursuant to the Open Public Meeting Act as Sentinel and the South Jersey Times, they were all notified of this meeting as well as being posted in the municipal building. Okay. Can we have a roll call, please, Lynn?
Mr. Deegan.
Here.
Mrs. Flame is absent. Mr. Rohr.
Here.
Mr. Milady is absent. Mr. Kelly is absent. Mr. Brandt.
Here.
Mr. Constantine.
Here.
Mr. Handy is absent. Mr. Schwade.
Here.
Mr. Travelone.
Here.
And Mr. Pesch is also absent. Thank you.
At this time, Lynn, I would like to seat Mr. Joe Schwade for Mr. John Milady.
Okay.
Secretary's report.
Okay. I have to ask that. I wasn't ready for you.
Actually, first comes the minutes. What is your pleasure to approve the minutes of our last meeting, which was March 16th, 2021? Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion we approve the minutes of 3/16/2021 as listed.
Roll call? Or is that an all in favor?
You do all in favor.
Roll call?
Yeah, no, all in
Okay.
favor is fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. And now it's time to review the Secretary's report for the month of March and April 2021.
March was, I believe March was March was 875 we took in, and April was 575.
That requires a roll call because of the monetary value, correct, Lynn?
Correct.
I make a motion we approve the Secretary's report of April 2021 and March 2021.
Second.
Okay, that's second on both, Mr. Constantine? Okay. Mr. Deegan?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Brandt?
Yes.
Mr. Constantine?
Yes.
Mr. Schwade?
Yes.
Mr. Travelone?
Yes.
Thank you all.
We have no resolutions to ratify this evening. Therefore, we'll go to our very first applicant, PB 21-1, Cooper, Block 4004, Lot 9, minor subdivision, creating one new lot with variances on Coles Mill Road. Will the Coopers please come up to the podium and get sworn in, please?
I will each raise your right hand. Swear the testimony you're about to give me the truth, but what true self you got.
Yes.
Thank you.
Feel free to tell us about your application, Mr. Cooper or Mrs. Cooper.
We currently live on 7.5 acres. We built a 3,000 square foot home approximately 19 years ago, raised our family there. And we're at the point now where it's just the two of us. My youngest of the four has graduated college. She still lives home, but she's close to out the door. And we're looking to build a smaller retirement home and to subdivide the 7.5 to give 4.5 acres and leave it with the current home, and to take 3 acres and build a retirement home for just the two of us. And that's the reason for the subdivision, so that we can move from the bigger home, move something that's smaller than 1,500 square feet type home, and for us to live.
In your application, are you seeking any variances or waivers?
We're seeking a variance so that we can use our current driveway as an easement to get to the back of the property.
Your current residence will be known as Lot 9.
That's correct. The current residence, yes.
And the new subdivision, should it be approved, would be Lot 9.01.
That's correct.
At this point, there was conversation, one of our board members pulled your deed that was filed September 7th, 2001,
Correct.
and found a restrictive easement that was applied to the deed.
Correct.
Can you please explain that if you can?
Sure. When we were here, we had originally purchased, which is 17 acres, which was the lots that are out in front, which are 404 Lot 1501, Lot 15, Lot 10, and 404 Lot 501. They all were part of this property at the time. At that specific time, we did the subdivision out front, sold those two pieces of property. The existing lot to the side, which is now Mr. Simpkins' lot, which is Lot 5.01, that was a landlocked parcel and it was separate. It wasn't really part of the subdivision, but we had no access to it. So the committee had allowed him to take his easement that is on their farmland and created an extra lot for him so that he could not an extra lot, the lot was already there, created an easement to get to the lot. So when we were doing all that, they had said, do you have any plans on, there was a lot of rumor and speculation at the time that I was going to try to put 5 or 6 houses and do little 1-acre lots. And to stop all that, it was Mr. Gravener at the time. He said, do you have a problem with the deed restriction? And I said, no, I don't. I don't have any plans on doing anything with that. Mr. Wiltsey was representing me at the time. And they said, okay, well, we could do a deed restriction. And I said, that's fine. I said, but I didn't want something that was just permanent, that we could never do anything. So the way that it was told to me is if we were able to get approvals to find another way in, the lots themselves could house up to 2 to 3 actual building lots. And I believe if you read further on in there, it does say that. So what I'm trying to do is come to the board and get access for 1 more, not 2 more, and just kind of be done with this so that my wife and I can have a spot to retire, basically. I mean, we're not ready to retire yet, and we're not in our 60s, but I still, we're looking towards the future and we want to stay. I still have children in the area. My grandson was just born. We're not planning on leaving. This is for us. So everybody knows me. Most of the people in the township know I'm a remodeling contractor, not a home builder. I don't build houses for a living. The only house I ever built was my own. I'm going to build this one with the help of whatever subs I can and get a little older now. But we have intentions on living there. This is what we want to do. So, and we recognized that we needed access to this. We went and saw the county, and we went and saw Bruce Ewing, and Bruce drew up the plan. County's already given us the approvals as long as we put money in escrow to repair, not to repair, but to widen our apron at the street. They don't have a problem with it. They just want a 20-foot wide apron, so any cars pulling in and pulling out, it's not really set up like a driveway. Since there's 2 homes, they want a wide enough apron. So as long as we put money in an escrow account, they've already started the process of giving us a new address. And they've already talked to Bruce and sent out the paperwork. Bruce has adjusted that on the print, and he's also marked out the easement that was granted actually back in '01, the easement for the county road. That was actually not on our last survey. For some reason it was omitted, even though the paperwork was already filed. So he's done the corrections. Seemed to us like this was a good way to get in. The lane already has a gas easement on it. It was created by the gas company back in the 40s, and it's been maintained by them ever since. They maintain it every 2 years. They come through, they cut it, they trim it. I do a little bit of brush hogging here or there, but for the most part, it's their easement, and they take care of it. And I do realize that my driveway won't be on top of their gas main, that I'm going to have to move it over, which it's currently over now. So it's never been an issue, and it's never been a problem in 19 years. So I don't expect it to be a problem moving forward. But that lane that you see that's going down that gas lane, that's already open, basically to the backyard of Lot 29 on Elmer Street. And, you know, kids walk through, and it's always kind of been that way. But it's just, I don't know, 30 feet wide, maybe at the max, 25. And it's just an easement.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cooper, for your explanation on how this restricted easement came about. To further clarify, if we approve this, there will be 2 lots. The current lot where the house is will have 90 foot of frontage. Am I correct in that statement?
That's correct.
Okay, and if approved, the newly created lot 901 will have 0 feet of frontage, but will have a right-of-way easement. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I asked the county, you know, what they preferred, and they kind of said it was up to us and Bruce, and they didn't want twin driveways going back because they didn't want 2 separate entrances. They preferred to handle it this way. A lot of it had to do, of course, with the gas line being there. They would rather have the easement of the gas line and then a driveway. And that was just Bruce's kind of call when we were drawing this up this way. So I just kind of listened to people that do know a little more about this than me, and I just took their advice and said, okay, let's keep moving forward. That's kind of how, like here, you know, there was little turnarounds and widening and little examples. Well, there was a couple other ways that we could have done it, I guess, in a dual driveway and all, and they kind of just nixed all that and said, this is what we think is best. And the county engineer has been out and he's checked everything. And so far, everything's been good. Clear sight, all the directions, you know, all that stuff.
Again, thank you, Mr. Cooper. Like yourself, I will seek advice from our solicitor.
Certainly.
A couple of things. It wouldn't have been Mr. Gragner, it would have been Mr. Meunier. Mr. Gragner, chairman of the zoning board, so back 20 years ago was
Okay.
planning board.
I apologize for
No,
that.
that's okay, just a clarification.
I thought, I could swear it was him that I was talking to, but maybe I was mistaken.
I don't think so, it was the, because he was the chairman back then, Mr. Meunier, but
Okay,
in any event, so my understanding is that 90 feet is what you had back then,
that's correct.
and that's the 90 feet is what you still have now.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's the access. Here's the difficulty with the application, and I wanted to make sure you had a chance to give you a full explanation. I'm glad you were represented back then because it's important you understood.
Excuse me, Mr. Borelli, could you please remove your mask? There's a lady in the audience who can't hear you. Or change the mic. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. The deed restriction, it sounded like you consented to the deed restriction back at the last meeting 20 years ago.
Correct.
And Mr. Wiltse prepared a deed that has that deed restriction in it. Here's the difficulty that I see. It says that lot 9 may be divided into a total of 3 lots, including the remainder, if lot 9 acquires additional frontage due to development of neighboring lots and streets. And at this point, you're indicating you haven't acquired any additional frontage, you still just have the 90 feet.
At the time when we were talking about that, it was just an example that was brought up. Over in Judy Avenue, they have a lot of little half lots that were there. I don't think that there was ever a plan. We never really had a plan to buy a half lot or whatever. I think it was just an example. I know Miss Merchaud down the end, she actually had a little half lot that went all the way back to Bernie's property that was, you know, years later that was purchased by his parents, and that was kind of taken up. So there was a lot of little areas that at one time went back to this part of the road, or this part of the property. So I don't think that it was necessarily that was a plan. I think it was just more verbiage of the way they talked about it. It was just my view. And I understand the way it may have been written. I don't think there was any intent to stop me from trying to utilize the back part of the woods. I just don't think that there was, it just wasn't really part of our plan to do so. And they just wanted to make sure more at the time that I wasn't going to develop this property. And I think that was just, now, maybe the way the verbiage is, maybe I need to get representation and try and see if there's a way around that. I don't know. I'm just telling you that at the time, we were very excited to try to build the house. It was suggested that they try and do just a single-family dwelling on there, and we were okay with that. But we also had said that, you know, in the future, we may want to build a house. What do we do about that? And this was verbiage that, you know, I wasn't there when they were writing it up. I got later and just kind of was, okay, there we go. So off I went to build. So
So here's the,
that's just my view
I
on it.
understand, you're not an attorney.
Exactly.
You were represented, I mean, your attorney prepared the deed itself. Here's the difficulty as far as the planning board's ability to do anything. Once this went into a recorded deed, under the law, it becomes a restriction for the benefit of the public as a whole. So this is very specific in the language that lot 9 may be divided, but only if they acquire additional frontage due to development of neighboring lots and streets. So I think we've established it has the same frontage that it had before, so they have not satisfied that condition of that restrictive covenant. So the next question you might have is, well, since the planning board approved it, can they now change it? And unfortunately, the answer is no, because there's case law that says that a restrictive covenant's for the benefit of the entire public, and they can change that, but they have to go to a court and get a court order to change it. I can even, I'll actually, just so that it's in the record, so to speak, there's a case called Sousa versus Denville Planning Board from the Appellate Division back in 1990. A subdivision was granted on conditions limiting further development. The court held that the planning board could not later entertain another subdivision application which violated the terms of the deed covenant, but the applicant could seek removal of the restriction in the Chancery Division of the Superior Court. So unfortunately, the board is not permitted to overturn or violate this restrictive covenant.
At this point, I may want to entertain a motion from the board to postpone the application so that they may seek counsel if they want to overrule their decision that was done in '01. It's up to Mr. Cooper, but of course upon your advice, Mr. Solicitor.
And I would never want to prevent them from going and seeking some legal counsel. Because I think as of tonight, if you were to say you wanted them to vote on it, they really can't do it.
I understand.
Not because we don't want to, I don't want to, but because there's actually, Superior Court case law says they can't.
We can't vote.
So we can just table
And you
it.
can't lift that covenant. It's interesting because if there's for a use variance, the court said that a zoning board can allow a use, but for some reason with these kind of covenants, they said, no, you gotta go to court to do it. But I wanted to make sure you had a chance to make your presentation, so
I understand.
you understood where you're coming from. You understood, where we were coming from. I'm not sure, we only have one application, so I'm not sure if these people were here for this application.
I'm assuming they're all my neighbors.
Now, they have an explanation as well. I don't know if they're for or against, but at least they now have an explanation and know what it's about. So, probably the best thing to do would be to sort of table it, so to speak.
Before we table it, would it be appropriate to open the open public portion just to see what the community
It might
says,
be helpful to Mr. and Mrs. Cooper to know what they're...
how they stand?
Yeah,
Right,
well-
is there a motion to open the open public portion?
Prior to doing that, I have one quick question for Mr. Borelli. In the event that the applicant were to successfully make a motion with the court and the court were to remove the restrictive covenant, the applicant would still be required then to present to this board ultimately for requesting approval, right? And there's no guarantee that this board obviously would grant such an approval, correct?
No, and I think it would be outside the board's jurisdiction you're saying to lift the covenant or to grant the...
No. If the courts were to lift the covenant, the applicant would still be required to make an application back to the board,
Oh, absolutely.
at which time the board would be under no obligation to grant said application, correct?
Right, it's a little bit of a tough application, yes.
Right.
Even without this, it's a little bit of a tough application, but,
Right.
Yes, the most they could do is to lift that and then have the opportunity to
Come back, right?
At this point, we have a motion to open the open public portion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, at this moment, anyone from the public that wishes to come and speak on this application and only this application, please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hey guys, Robert Gillespie, 121 Elmer Street. The way it was kind of written, the way I received it was, I thought he was,
Go ahead, swear you in, sit there.
Oh.
Raise your right hand. Swear to testimony about the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I did.
Thank you.
The way it was said to me, it seemed like he was subdividing one lot and making 2 more lots. So it almost seemed like he was getting 3 lots in that 7-acre parcel. And now, it's directly in my backyard. When we bought the property, we knew it was landlocked. I bought it from my wife's grandfather. He had mentioned that Lee Cooper tried to get a road put back there 20 years ago, and he tried to give him a parcel of land and let him square off his property and all this hearsay, this back and forth. Long story short, the woods is the reason why we bought the property. And now, in Franklinville, when you build a house, the septic's got to go there, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be tree cut down city. It just, I don't understand why, if he wants to build a parcel, a house, why can't he just build it anywhere? The house that he's mentioning is 3,000 square foot, and then there's a big barn that goes with it. It seems like a lot already going on back there. When the trees aren't in bloom, I could practically wait till, like, how much closer do I got to be to my neighbors, I guess?
Okay, if you want to speak, you have to be sworn in, okay? Thank you.
So, all I'm asking is, what's the point of moving to Franklinville if I lose that joy of seclusion? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gillespie. Anyone else, please come forward and state your name and address.
David Parent. I live at 146 Elmer Street. I moved in 1989. I live on the cul-de-sac that is directly opposite of the gas line easement. And my concern is that, one,
Swear to testimony about the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
my concern is, we, as was mentioned, we came there when my kids were little in that cul-de-sac to play. I now have guardianship of my brother-in-law who is handicapped, who walks that cul-de-sac. He also plays basketball out in front of my house. If this is granted, what is to stop an easement that's there across the street from becoming a main road? And now I have cars coming down the street. There's an auto dealer at the end of the street. They test drive cars in the court. Now it's completely open access for cars to race up and down that street and access Coles Mill Road. And that will be, there's no street lights there. It could become a very dangerous situation. And that's my statement.
Thank you for your concerns.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Swear to testimony about the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
I'm very sorry, Mr. Cooper. I know you spent a lot of money
Excuse me, ma'am.
for this property.
Your name and address, please.
Oh, Carolyn Talbot, 540 Judy Avenue, and I'm on the corner of that woods that they're going to develop.
Thank you.
I feel very badly. I don't even want to be here. I have real environmental concerns, and I've had concerns about this property for a very long time. I spoke with the township administrator several years ago. I spent 16 years on the Franklin Township Ambulance Corps. I have lived in this house since 1976. From that time until that property was sold, our fire department maintained fire roads. No one's allowed back there. You can't walk back there. Those roads are gone. Trees are down. It is a mess, and it's frankly dangerous. And I would love it if Mr. Cooper would allow the fire department to come in and maintain those fire roads. You know, this is not good. I also have concerns about the perk test. That for so many years, so many buyers, even one from California, wanted to buy that property. but they couldn't pass a perk test to build multiple dwellings. Also, there is the gas line, which is really scary, very scary. So, much like Michelle and Bob, when I bought my little 3-bedroom rancher, it wasn't for the house. It was for the trees. That's who owns my property, and I love to garden. I have a beautiful garden. I love to garden. I love the trees. I don't know, if you're not respecting the land now, how are you going to respect the land later? And what are you going to turn it into? So that's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I have environmental concerns, and in addition to this distinguished board, I would really like to see an environmental impact study done by our environmental group, our commission.
Believe it or not, we have an environmental commission
I know we do.
that previews every application before we see it.
Well, I'm impressed. I love Franklin Township.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm here a long time. And thank you for your time, and thank you for letting me expound. I appreciate it. And, you know, if you have to have so much frontage. I don't want smaller frontage. I had to do my frontage. In fact, when we built our addition, I have a second lot. So I'm not on some little half lot on Judy Avenue. I'm on a 220 lot on Judy Avenue that I maintain. So
Thank you for your
the
concern.
law is the law. That I don't want to see that.
Anyone else wish to speak on this application? Again, please state your name and address for the record and be sworn in.
Samantha.
Swear testimony about to give the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you.
Samantha Cole, 133 Elmer Street. So we moved to Franklinville at the end of 2018, and we chose the house because it was at a dead-end street. It was quiet. We have 4 children. And to my understanding, Lot 29 would affect my property, and the driveway would, be at the end beside my property. And my concern is the traffic that it's going to cause, having the small children. There's a basketball court that's right there. The kids ride their bike up and down the street. I'm just afraid of what the traffic will be, how it will affect, the children being able to play freely outside. So yeah, it's a no for me.
Thank you, Samantha. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
Swear testimony about to give the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
Stephen Bothman, 109 Elmer Street. Pretty much it's all been said. The traffic, what are the chances somewhere down the road it's not going to turn into a through street down there? I bought my house because it's a cul-de-sac. My son's already been almost hit twice on that road, on a dead-end street. My daughter's been almost hit once. It's a dead-end street. That's why we bought it. People don't respect that. But aside from that, you put a through street down there, you're going to have cut-throughs. They already cut down Judy from Coles Mill to Delsey and Delsey to Coles Mill. It's ridiculous. Plus the car lot down the end of the street Mr. Parent talked about. They're a joke too. I don't want more traffic. I don't want to lose the trees behind us. I don't want more water coming into my basement because the drainage is bad. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak? We're in open public. We'll call you up later, Mr. Cooper. At this point, does anyone wish to close the open public portion?
I make a motion, we close the public portion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
At this time, I'll call Mr. Cooper to come back up to the podium.
You're still sworn.
Okay.
Do you wish to address any of the concerns from
Well,
the neighbors?
yeah, I do. As far as putting in a road from 19 years ago was never an option. I don't know where it came from. I don't know who said it. I never would have had the money to put in a road. I barely had the money to buy the property. We mortgaged everything we had just to get it. It's the reason why I sold off the other lots. out front. I have 4 children. I would have loved to have kept those lots for my kids. Honestly, couldn't afford the taxes for the next 18 years till they were old enough to then have their own home. All that stuff, I don't know where it came from. As far as the trees, we love the trees too. That's why they're there. I like my privacy. That's probably why I don't know most of my neighbors, because we keep to ourselves. And that's just my choice. I don't have anything against any of these people. I understand their concerns. We're not going to cut down all the trees. We're going to cut down about a half an acre to put a house in. But the biggest concern is, I don't know how everybody thinks that I'm getting in from the cul-de-sac. That's not what we were applying for. I don't even touch the cul-de-sac property. I'm sorry, what was your name? Samantha's property touches the cul-de-sac, and she has a well there and a bunch of other stuff that's in the way, and nobody can drive through. So I don't know how any of that would even be talked about, and whether somebody has a business up the street or not. If they're zipping around in Judy Avenue, then maybe the police should be taking care of them. And if they're zipping up and down Elmer Court, it really doesn't have anything to do with me, and I haven't done anything wrong to any of these people to upset them. I like to think that I take care pretty well of my property, but if there's a down tree and somebody doesn't like it, then I'm sorry, but we kind of leave it natural. Woodpeckers like down trees. My dogs are out in the woods all the time. They like to play. If, honestly, if I was only taking care of 3 acres instead of 7.5, I probably would brush hog back there and clean it up a little bit. But most of the branches and the shrubs and the crap came from everybody else's yard, and all the piles are still there, and I don't usually say anything when everybody's throwing trees and branches in my woods, because I already know they have backyards. With the exception of one person about 15 years ago who he and I had a little problem. Other than that, I haven't really said anything. I pretty much keep to myself. And I have absolutely no intentions of, driving through to Elmer Court. And if I did get some kind of access through Elmer Court, it would be a personal driveway that came from Elmer Court to my house. It's not going to be a throughway. The easement is still there. It's grass. And it's gravel, and it's gravel. I mean, the only person who's ever gone through there with a vehicle is a gas company. So I don't have people coming up the driveway and strangers driving through. It's just a bunch of nonsense.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.
At this point, I'll open up discussion amongst the planning board members. Does anyone have any concerns or additions to add to Mr. Borelli's comments?
Well, my only concern is, you mentioned a motion to postpone. If that's the pleasure of the board, I'd like to hear the applicant make that request rather than
I understand.
make that motion on his behalf.
Can you come back to the
Yeah.
podium, Mr. Cooper? At this point, do you wish to ask for a postponement?
Oh, yes,
so
I
you can
would.
seek counsel?
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Okay, thank you.
And I think the way we should do that, so the public doesn't have to be coming back. I don't anticipate he'll probably be back next month. It's a little bit too much for somebody to handle. So it should be with notice whenever it comes back. So
I
we're
agree.
going to basically table it. And if there's a decision where nothing is done in the next few months, then we can deny it without prejudice at some point. I would suggest that it not be postponed until next month so that people have to come back. I think they should get notice again whenever he does come back. It's
I
probably not
understand.
going to be that quick.
So Jason, with notice, making
Okay.
a motion.
At the applicant's request, I make a motion that we table PB
21-1.
21-1 with the understanding that any further hearing on the matter would require additional notice. So we're not waiving the right to additional notice. So,
And also a waiver of the time limit. In other words, Mr. Cooper, you're not going to hold us to, we have a time limit by which we have to make a decision. You're waiving that time limit so you can give you time. Is that, okay?
with the waiver of the tolling of the time for the application hearing.
Is there a second on that motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Deegan.
Yes.
Mr. Rohr.
Yes.
Mr. Brandt.
Yes.
Mr. Constantine.
Yeah.
Mr. Schwade. Mr. Travelo.
Yes. All right.
will they need to apply for a variance? to
It's the
allow-
same variances, Mr. Constantine. There's two variances here.
Yeah, unless they change the configuration somehow or come up with a new plan. But yeah, actually, there's two variances. They still have a 90-foot frontage, which is not enough for the lot that they're creating. It's going to be a smaller lot with the house. But then they're also creating a lot with no access to a roadway. And that's a whole different variance, a whole different set of standards. So it's two.
At this point, I would ask for a short intermission if the public wishes to leave, and we'll continue our business. If not, you can remain. Thank you, folks.
Good evening. Have a good night.
Good night, folks.
Have a good night. Full ice cubes.
Good night.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Cooper.
Good
Good
night.
night,
Have a
folks.
good
See
night.
you next time.
Boy, you know how to empty a house.
At this point, we'll resume the meeting, and we'll do correspondence first. Lynn, from April and May.
Okay, hang on a second. I don't think I have the whole thing here.
Well, move up.
Let me grab, okay, there you go. I'm sorry.
While I'm riding the back of the bus.
I don't know, he doesn't like us. Bill? Okay, for planning board, for 4/20/21, there were no resolutions. There is an ordinance amending chapter 253 of the land development, and that is, okay,
Correspondence.
that is the one that, promotes orderly development, limits congestion on streets, protects against hazards, regulates intensity of use, regulates location of buildings, establishes standards of development, encourages good aesthetics, prohibits incompatible uses, regulates alterations of existing buildings, conserves taxable value of land, and implements the master plan of the Township of Franklin. And it's by adding a new subsection of agricultural or horticultural purpose or use in a non-pine lands area. So they retitled the current article entitled Definitions for Agricultural or Horticultural Purposes or Use as agricultural or horticultural purpose or use in, now this one says in pine lands area. So, where does that leave us? I think we're just looking at this because this has not been adopted yet as of May 11th. It was introduced April 13th. No,
No.
no. I'm looking at the
It was
dates
passed.
on the third page. Yeah, that's not been, it's,
The last meeting it was passed.
so you're just looking for recommendations and/or
I
comments?
think we're beyond that one.
Yeah,
We're beyond that, it's already
It's
passed.
Well, wait.
April, okay, sorry.
We only have the one tonight, which is the cannabis one. to
Okay.
review.
Is
The
there
next one-
correspondence on cannabis from the Township Committee to us?
That's on the, yeah, it's on the next section, but you still have to go to a street vacation.
That was
did we-
Fernwood.
Did we do that already?
We did that already.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, quick clarification on that one, because you wrote, the way you termed the letter, it said that we had no comment, and I thought the decision was to recommend a denial.
Only on that portion, wasn't it?
No, I think it was based on the current submission, denial, basically leaving the door open
I thought it
for a
was-
future submission, so.
Oh, I put no recommendation. In the present form, because you couldn't offer suggestions on how to change it.
Right.
That's, if I'm incorrect, I will be happy to,
Well, I defer to my fellow members. Didn't we,
I'd have to
it
go.
wasn't that we had no recommendations, we recommended that they not proceed with it.
I believe you're right, Mr. Brand.
Right.
This Fernwood,
Bill, it's in your neighborhood, correct? Fernwood?
Yes. You guys recommended not to do it.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
When we send in the present form, just because
In
you weren't
the
closing the
present
door
form.
completely.
For the guy to come back and ask for
Yeah,
something slightly
exactly.
different, right, right.
it's just
So
a,
you need to amend your comment. We did make a recommendation not to approve it in its present application.
Present form.
okay, so you want it to say, made recommendation for no,
Not to vacate the street as presented in the present form.
I mean, I don't know if you don't want to use the word deny, but you could use the word deny the application. Deny the request. We recommend to
Make-
deny the request. Is
make
that-
the recommendation
That's correct.
to.
Okay.
What did you say first, Michael? We'll
What
take
did
the
I say
legal.
first?
Yeah, made recommendation to,
With the township getting not vacate the street
to not vacate.
as presently presented.
In its present, in the present form. Okay. I will make that amendment.
What was wrong with it?
I don't remember what we came
It
up
was
with.
blocking off any future development, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think there was maybe a, I don't know. I have to
They
go
wanted
back
to
and-
vacate the whole street, and it affected
Other lots.
other
yeah,
lots
or
other
lots,
than their own that
lots.
they claimed they were mowing.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
I understand that. I argue with that. So, makes sense. They need access to other lots.
Okay, so 420 is done. I just put it all out there again because we missed so many meetings and whatnot. So for 518, Michael did not have a resolution because the meeting was canceled prior. And then the second item is 0621, marijuana prohibition, retail market dispensaries, action required.
They tabled it at the committee.
Yes, we tabled it because we wanted to get feedback
Right.
from both zoning and planning
Right.
to see if they had, any thoughts of the matter and if they were pro or against it.
So basically, we've done this before. We've got to give a little more explanation on this one because I know it's a topic of a little bit more interest than most. But as most of you are aware, they passed the cannabis law, the legalization. And what they did as part of that, as far as the land use part of it is, they gave a deadline by August, I think it's 22nd. Municipalities can adopt an ordinance prohibiting operation of some or all of the following, some or all cannabis establishments. Cannabis establishments include cultivator, manufacturer, wholesaler, retailer, distributor, and delivery service. So the municipality has a right to prohibit any or all of them by ordinance as long as they adopt it by August, an ordinance. If the township committee doesn't act by August, then the growing, cultivating, manufacturing, selling, reselling, and bulk transport of cannabis will be automatically permitted in all industrial zones. So if the township does nothing, that's what it will be. And retail stores will be permitted as a conditional use in all commercial and retail zones.
Wow.
So you would lose control over taking any kind of action, because that's what it will be as of August to take out. Then it'll be 5 years before you can make any changes.
Wow.
So the township committee at this point has an ordinance out there that they've referred to us pursuant to the statute that says they must refer to us for comment before they adopt. But essentially is going to allow two of the categories. And those two
Growing, distribution.
are 5 and 6, which are
No, I think it's all but 5 and 6.
okay, they're gonna prohibit 5 and 6, which is retailer and delivery. So,
That's retail delivery.
well, two things, retailer and delivery. So you can't have any retail stores in the township, you can't have a delivery service in the township.
Retail.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not.
Because there's wholesale delivery
But the wholesale would be to a retail
for the
store.
grower.
Yeah. Oh, for a grower. Well, a grower, I'm not sure what they get, but yes, as part of that. This is a delivery service where you're at your house, you order some pot, and they deliver it to you.
Amazon.
So you can't.
Exactly.
Amazon Pot.
Yeah, so you can't prohibit the delivery service from Clayton delivering into Franklin. So if we don't allow a delivery service to be here, but I still want to get it delivered to me, and there's a delivery service at Clayton, I can still get it. You can't prevent them from delivering it. So what they're proposing is prohibiting a delivery service from being here and a retail store from being here. So I know you know about your referral duties, so to speak, but I'll refresh your memory on that. So, you can make a recommendation for, against, no recommendation. You can say you want modifications or suggestions. If you do make a specific suggestion or recommendation to the township committee, if they go against that, it has to do it with 3 votes.
So right now, the township committee is tasking this board to make a decision. And then what Mr. Borelli has said, we can agree to the ordinance, we can disagree to the ordinance, or we can say no comment at this time. Those are our 3 things that we can comment this evening on this 0621.
If we disagree, does it stand for 5 years?
No, our recommendation just goes to the township committee because they're required to refer it to us.
They can overrule our decision because our decision is mute. It's just, we're a tool in their toolbox.
Let me try to give some clarity to this. There were some people in the audience at that meeting, Kevin, that thought that we should look into it at least and to look at it from a revenue stream. If we were to have a retail establishment, what would the additional revenue to the township be by having that service provided? There are several people on the township committee that have no problems with a medical dispensary, but we do not want to have the recreational use, dispensaries or retail stores.
Well,
I'm sorry, what it actually, just so you understand, what the referral statute actually says is that we are to identify any provisions in the proposed development, regulation, revision, or amendment which are inconsistent with the master plan, and recommendations concerning those inconsistencies and any other matters as the board deems appropriate.
We're all aware that our master plan does not include the retail sales of any of these products. So it's not within the master plan. We're painting outside the box here. Okay? It's a brand new business that there's no prior law to govern. However, as Mr. Deegan has stated, the township committee at this point may not be in favor of this ordinance, and they're seeking our decision on whether we agree or disagree with them. And once again, we can agree to this ordinance to prohibit retail sales from within this community and to prohibit delivery from within our community. Again, the other parts of the ordinance, marijuana sales could take place only wholesale and only through growing. Is that correct?
Right, manufacturing, growing.
Manufacturing or growing.
And distributing.
Distributing,
Last board?
Well, we have an approved facility now, and up and running, I guess, but, so they were able to distribute from their facility out.
in a wholesale manner. You can't go there and buy.
Yeah, I don't understand, maybe you can clue me in, Dave, on it, what the township committee thought process is, but I don't agree with the prohibition of the retail sales, but I can understand some of the board members or committee members' position on it. What I don't understand is the prohibition on the delivery service. What is the reasoning for the prohibition of the delivery service? I don't,
Well, I think I can only speak for myself. I can't
Right.
speak for anyone else on that committee. But again, I just see that as a means of coming into the township that may be abused.
The way I read that Class 6 delivery license would be the business is in Franklin Township, but it can deliver outside of Franklin Township. And if there was a business in Williamstown that delivered, you could call them and have them deliver here. So,
That's exactly what Michael said. Yeah, but I don't want to promote that, just like I don't want to promote a store.
right.
Okay, so again, that's only my opinion. I'm one of 5.
yeah, I understand, some of the other committee members expressed, because I expressed this to them, to Mr. Deegan and Committeeman Doyle, and possibly a couple of the other committee folks, but and the feedback I got was that on the retail sales, like they don't want to drive by Wawa, and maybe it's not Wawa, but and see a bunch of underage teenagers out hanging around out front waiting for URI to go in there and buy something and make a straw purchase for them. And I can understand that. And again, I don't necessarily personally, I don't agree with it that we should prohibit it, but and I'm not even a user of marijuana, but that was the idea on the retail, and they didn't want to be walking into a store and have their young child, be exposed to it. And I can understand that. But on the delivery side, I still can't understand why you would prohibit a delivery business from being within the township and collecting those revenues. I mean, let's say, for instance, that this thing really got big. It's like no different than somebody used the word Amazon than prohibiting Amazon from having a warehouse in Franklin Township. I mean, if I can call and order it, and the guy can come from Clayton, come from Newfield, come from Vineland, or he can come from Franklin or vice versa, that the same argument can't be made about the exposure to young children. I mean, that's the part where I can't wrap my head around why we would want to prohibit that particular use as well. And on the retail end, I think that, under Mike's explanation, it would be considered conditional use, and I think we could put conditions upon it that would alleviate probably most of those concerns. But that's just my personal opinion. It's up to the township committee to do what they will with that. But is that correct, Mike, that the township has the police power to put conditions upon that particular use, correct?
Yeah, if the township committee did nothing, the retails would be permitted as a conditional use in all commercial retail zones, so then the conditions have to be put on.
Right,
Or they could adopt something now allowing it somewhere with conditions.
right.
I understand the township people not wanting a bunch of stoners, taking advantage of it. I agree. The retail licenses could cause an issue. Also agree that the delivery service probably wouldn't play into that.
So-
Kind of early to be telling. We have nowhere else where it's happening yet.
That is correct. However, I believe for this board to play it safe, we could take a pass and make no comment at this time as our official comment to the township committee, and put the burden of the decision on the township committee. However, if anybody would object to that, obviously. We have one here that would, but in a form, but he's entitled to his opinion.
Right.
However, at this point, we as a board collectively have to make a decision and pass that decision forward to the township committee. Is there any more discussion on this topic? With no more discussion, is there a motion on the floor for a decision?
I make a motion that we don't make a decision on this matter.
No comment at this
No
time.
comment at this time.
Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Roll call, please.
There was no comment at this time. So make sure I get it right.
You got it right.
We can readdress this later, right?
Yes, we can. That's the beauty of the law. We
5
can
years.
revisit this in 5 years after the state of New Jersey gets up and going, and we can see its problems or no problems or concerns with the community. However, I believe if we were to slam the door shut today, we may not have that decision 5 years from now.
Mr. Deegan?
I had to recuse myself.
Was there a second?
Yes, there
Yes,
was.
Joe Swade.
Mr. Schwade.
Joe Swade. Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Brandt?
No.
Mr. Constantine?
Yes.
Mr. Schwade? Mr. Travelin?
Yes. Okay, motion carries for no comment at this time. Moving on, is there a motion to go into open public portion?
Make a motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have a person from the public wishing to come forward. Please state your name and address for the record, sir.
Oh, it's Jim.
Bill Morris, 585 Oak Avenue. Do I need to be sworn in, Mike? I disagree with what you just did. I think at the minimum, we should permit it at the 40-55 interchange. Very restrictive, outlawed in the rest of the township, but there's a tax rep, there's what, 2% tax if anything sold. It could be a substantial revenue stream for the township.
Well, your comments have been heard by a member of the township committee, and maybe they will adopt your ideas.
Okay, thank you.
Bill. Is there a motion to close open public portion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Borelli, do we need to go into closed session?
You do not. No, I would thank you for, I guess, some cards here. You can say why if you want to. I don't want
Okay,
to.
Mr. Borelli's mother passed away this week. We give our condolences to Mr. Borelli and his family. Thank you, Michael. Is there a motion to adjourn the May meeting of the Township of Franklin Planning Board?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
One second. On the additional correspondence, did you have to do anything with the ordinance 7-21, or is that just common knowledge?
Oh, no, it's already been approved.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That was the
That's-
open space,
That's the one that was all approved. Okay, so that's the third one, okay.
right, the land use ordinance.
Yes. That's the one
Maybe we
that-
can send an endorsement from the planning board of that ordinance now that it's been,
Yes, let's stop. They allow it.
Is there a motion
I know
to
he
adjourn
is.
this evening's meeting?
I made that motion.
Second.
Yeah.
Seconded by Mr. Rohr. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Meeting adjourned.